Welcome to the K-State Regen Ag Pod, where we talk all things regenerative agriculture here at Kansas State University, across the state of Kansas and beyond. I'm Nick Detter, your host, and today I'm joined by Nick and Hayden Guetterman of Guetterman Brothers Family Farm in Miami County, Kansas. Nick and Hayden are both K-State agronomy graduates, Nick in 2008 and Hayden in 2017. They were raised on a farm that has been no-till since 1990 that Nick helped bring the use of cover crops to in 2011, which they now use across 95% of their acres. When Hayden returned from K-State in 2017, he brought a little bit of the university home with him as he helped to establish the farm's partnership with Dr. Chuck Rice's Kansas Soil Health Network, which the farm has been partnering with to conduct research since 2018. Together, they combine practical expertise and innovation to advance sustainable farming while honoring their family legacy. Nick, Hayden, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Nick.
Well, I think just to start off, I just kind of introduced you guys a little bit, but if you wanted to add anything about your background, your farm's background, and maybe in particular, what got you guys into this regenerative agriculture, soil health, whatever the term is you want to use, what way made you start thinking about making some of the changes that you've implemented on your operation?
I would say our background goes back long ways. Started with my grandfather. He was a dairy farmer, just had 80 acres after World War II, and he lived through the Depression and knew conservation was important. And he would always said his farm wasn't suitable for row crops, which today is one of our most highly productive row crop farms, but he seeded it down to brome or perennial grass and would rent other land to put row crops on because he knew conservation was important. I think our regenerative ag practices kind of started to eliminate erosion due to water here in East Central Kansas with 38 inches of rain, just to keep our terraces maintained. And that was the biggest reason Dad started no-tilling in the mid 80s. So that's kind of the first step in getting into regenerative ag, and then obviously became 100% no-till and using cover crops, and that's how the journey started and where it's taken us.
Hayden, would you have anything you'd want to add to that?
Not really. Nick kind of said a lot of it there. I mean, we've uh, over the course of the last 10 years have kind of fully integrated cover crops in our no-till system, and that's kind of what has been kind of adopted to me since I've been back here on the farm full time. And so, like when Nick was growing up, it was the no-till, and now that it's myself and my brothers and cousins that my generation. It's more of the cover crop practices. So that's kind of something unique to see.
What are some of the big benefits? I mean, you mentioned the erosion control, but are there other benefits you've seen or challenges that you guys have had to deal with as you've implemented these practices?
So learning how to farm different would probably be the biggest challenge. Kind of someone not throwing away everything you knew from the past, but just learning how to manage the cover crops, when to seed them, when to plant into them. It's brought on new challenges, but new opportunities as well. So that's kind of probably been the biggest challenge. Just learning to manage it, where to get the seed, what to without breaking the bank, and find the best seed that works for you on your farm.
I understand you guys have also started using poultry litter. I don't know how long you've been using it. What's been your experience with introducing poultry litter into as one of your main sources of nutrients?
I would say we're starting to see more movement in our soil biology and the cover crops working better. Just having the manure piece added to it as well. Seems like that's kind of a thing where 1 + 1 = 3. It's just a great system. It's kind of really opened our eyes to there's more to the soil than just chemicals, and whether it be herbicides, pesticides, or chemical fertilizer. When you integrate manure, you get a lot of biology. When you just go buy fertilizer, you're just getting that nutrient. You're not getting all the stuff that makes manure stink too. So that's what's been probably we kind of knew that maybe that existed, but we're witnessing it firsthand and seeing like in the K-State plot we have the soil health plot where we've noticed that the biology has improved since the adoption of poultry litter has taken place.
Yeah, you brought up that research you've done with K-State. I know, Hayden, you were a big part of getting that research started on your guys' farm. So could you talk a little bit about what you've been researching with K-State and why you wanted to get involved in that research in the first place?
Um, so what the Kansas Soil Health Network brings to our farm is the ability uh, to partner with them to collect data that would be all related to the physical, biological, and the economical side of what soil health practices bring to your farm. And um, and that's a lot. And getting that data collected just on as us as farmers, we got so many other tasks to do over the course of the year. And by partnering with K-State on this, it's really helped us collect that data easier. And also, it's been a good partnership to have for them as well, to have this data to be able to share with other constituents across the state and the nation.
Absolutely. I think when we talk with farmers, there's definitely a level of, I think it just feels more real, if you can say, hey, we did this research on a farm on this scale as compared to just, doing it at a plot size. So we're definitely grateful to have gotten to partner with you guys on that.
What's also unique about the plot is it's a large uh, on-farm research plot, which most research done is done at a smaller scale. So this is I think around a 60-acre plot and replicated strips across that plot. So we're getting a lot of data across a good set of acres.
For either one of you guys, what would you say have been some of the biggest takeaways, the most valuable things you've learned through this, I guess, 8 years now of doing research with K-State?
I think it's been good to partner with somebody to, we're farming 12,000 acres. And so we get so caught up in trying to farm 12,000 acres and not worry about doing research and committed to doing a plot over a 10-year time frame kind of isn't high on our what it should be, but it's not high on our priority list. And having partner with K-State kind of keeps us holds us accountable to making sure that plot gets done, and they're assisting us in doing the research on the plot or taking the soil sampling. So that's been a good thing how to have us commit to doing a long-term study. So that being said, what we've seen is, 8 years of um, great things happen as far as we're seeing good things from soil biology, but we've also noticed when we dig a soil pit is we're seeing the A horizon or the black dirt or the topsoil is 4 to 6 inches deeper where we're cover cropping versus where we're not cover cropping. I don't know if without the partnership, if we'd have been committed enough to have a plot like that on our own, where we're keeping the same strips replicated like that over an 8 to 10 year time period. And hopefully this partnership continues on and we can see what comes down the road.
Hey, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think being involved in this partnership as well as has gave um, the people on our farm and on our team here the peace of mind knowing um, the practices that we're doing, and sometimes you wonder why are we doing this, or all the other stresses revolved around managing it. It gives us a peace of mind that um, we're doing something positive here.
You mentioned, some of those stresses that comes with managing it differently. And, Nick, you even kind of said it's almost like learning to farm a new way. So if theoretically you had a time machine, you could go back, talk to yourself 10, 15 years ago, what advice would you give yourself that you wish you would have known back then that you do know now?
I think the top of the list would be it's a toss up between planting green, getting comfortable with that. If I'd have known that the first year, that would have helped a lot. And then two, legume cover crops, whether it be pea, lentil, vetch, maybe clovers, are extremely hard to grow the first time. Getting them to nodulate, because if you haven't grown them on your soils before, that bacteria or fungi is not in the soil to make that process happen. We've tried every inoculant in the book, but you grow it this. Luckily enough, I was bullheaded to grow it again on the same field. So, it's fine. It worked great that time. So then we're seeing that almost an investment that first year. You plan whether it be right now our favorite legume cover crop be hairy vetch. The first time you grow it on a field, you're gonna be disappointed in the nodulation and the amount of growth you get, and then you come back to that field and grow it again, and it'll be a different story. And so that's in a corn soybean rotation. You're planting legumes every other year. That's almost a 4-year cycle before you're really in the cycle or in the program. So, that first time we planted a lot of winter peas was in the fall of 2014, and they didn't do much. And we just kind of thought, this thing doesn't work. Well, they didn't nodulate well. And so that's kind of something that nobody shared or knew to tell us. And I hope, hopefully get that out there for folks that are transitioning or wanting to do some of this stuff now. Is that's something you got to be ready to prepare for. I think too, we got bogged down early on in our journey, and no-till wheat works great on our farm, but planting something after wheat the next year in East Central Kansas with 38 inches of rain, with all that residue, is hard to get those fields to dry out. And planting cover crops after wheat's kind of been that same way here in our part of the state. So a lot of soil health advocates or farmers really promote growing wheat, which I think it's great in the western part of the state or in a drier climate to plant corn into later on but it's hard to plant corn after wheat here the next year. We do wheat, double crop beans, or wheat and a cover crop. Either way, planting corn that next year is challenging. And we've gotten to where we used to grow wheat on fields where we would want to maybe keep the soil covered in the wintertime, or before we were growing cereal rye for a cover crop, just to hold the soil, we'd use wheat. And now that we're having good success with cereal rye and hairy vetch holding the soil or having as a cover crop, this will be the first year we haven't planted wheat. So we're using rye to do that for us. And our soils are in better shape, so we're raising better corn and beans, and the need for wheat here is kind of going away as we see it today. Now that could change. What we learned 5 years from now might be different than now, but at the current stage of our farm, the cover crops are fitting nicely into our corn soybean rotation and working nicely here in East Central Kansas. And I think we got bogged down by the wheat, trying to get wheat in that rotation the first part of the journey. And say go back, I wouldn't do that, and that would have sped this up several years. It kind of really seemed to take us 10 years to get this program down, and we could have trimmed that down to 5 if we know what we know today.
Just to kind of lay it out clearly for people, you're generally going from corn to then your cover crop after corn would be like a cereal rye to kind of for more of the residue before the soybean. Is that kind of the thought process?
Yeah, we're growing a grass before beans
Yep,
and a legume before corn. So
exactly.
the rotation, and that's simple. I mean, that's just a simple rule of thumb for cover crops. Um, don't get the blends are cool, and I think blends have a place, and I think there's advantages to them. But is the money you spend on radishes or something else in a rye and a blend before beans that needs to be the base needs to be rye? Is it worth spending that, or should you spend more money on rye seed or something else? So um, the same way with, I think you can get too in the weeds with the blends. So just focusing on rye in front of beans and vetch in front of the corn has been a good thing here. So um, yeah, that's kind of a good rule of thumb. So we're planting after corn, we're doing rye, and then we're planting beans green into that, and then we're interseeding hairy vetch into standing soybeans, and then we're planting corn into that vetch. So it's kind of we're growing corn and beans for cash crops and rye and vetch for cover crops. So yeah, we're always looking at trying new things, but those are consistent. Um, I think Steve Groff has said he's been messing with cover crops a lot longer than us. He says the go-tos are for him for a long time been rye and vetch. They just work. They're forgiving, resilient, and tough, and winter hardy.
You have any thoughts on that question?
Well, we've talked about this before, but in college, um, I would say, I guess between both me and Nick, I guess soil biology was not nowhere near on our minds as it is today. And so 10 years ago, I was uh, a junior in college, and I probably should have been taking some microbiology courses in the soil department at at, at K-State Agronomy, and that I kind of always regret that. And of course, you always regret things that you wish you would have took in college, um, going on in life here. But um, that's that's one thing. 10 years ago, probably wish I would have done was learn more about that. But we've learned a lot since then, and here we are today, and there's still awfully more to learn.
Yeah, I think Hayden makes a really good point there about the soil biology. I think our farm has struggled with for a long time poor fertility levels. Um, a lot of the land we farmed when we took it on had been planted to a lot of continuous soybeans, and no fertility was added for a lot of years, and potash levels were low and extremely low. And then we hear through a lot of the fertility folks that you need 4 to 8% base saturation potash and 20, 30, 40, 50 parts per million phosphorus. So we have phosphorus, a lot of them is in the on the Bray ones or in the single digits or in the teens on the low level, and the potash level, the base saturation potash around 1 to 2%. So I don't know how important that is the longer we go along here. Obviously, we're poultry litters for providing that fertility for us, but um, we've been thrown the fire hose of especially during my schooling or when I was growing up, of we just got to put on P&K, put it on, put it on, put it on, and financially and um, energy wise, we're exhausted by applying fertilizer. We used to apply a lot of phosphate and potash with air drills and run around the clock, it felt like, after harvest or in the early spring, applying P and K and loading semi loads of it, and not only to mention working hard, but that was costing us a lot of money, and just so much focusing on the chemical part of the soil fertility test and not thinking about implementing the biology a part of that. And not to I'm not one to say that, well, I don't think we don't need to apply phosphate and potash, but I think there's more to it than that. And when you back up as an industry as a whole, I mean, even we need to be looking at that and figuring out ways to, or not figuring out, but just figuring out how to implement that biology, and maybe unlocking more of that phosphorus and within the soil instead of applying so much DAP. And so we're kind of seeing that, I think, with the poultry litter, unlocking the mycorrhizal fungi that we're starting to see come up in the soil since we've started applying litter. That's what we didn't see that until we started applying. After years of no-till, we didn't see that until we started applying poultry litter.
Well, my next question is, we're starting to get, at least from K-State's perspective, more interest in regenerative agriculture from private companies and government agencies, and it's a hot topic in the university. And I just think it's important for those folks to get to hear perspectives from actual farmers on the ground who are doing this stuff. And so I just was curious if you'd have anything, to say to people who are interested in this topic, but maybe aren't fully that aren't farmers, that are, they're interested in this for whatever their motivation is, but they maybe don't have as much of a farming background. What would do you wish that they would learn from this conversation or hear from you guys?
I think there's three ways that a private company can get involved. One would be through a carbon market. Two would be through a premium for something regeneratively grown, or three, just a per acre payment for someone that is growing something regeneratively. We have seen on our farm, we've seen a private company pay out a per acre payment to plant cover crops for a few years. We haven't participated in any carbon markets at this time as of yet. I think there's just more information to be told there before we commit to one or the other, before we take any money from one of those. And then ultimately, I'd like to see a premium paid for something regeneratively grown. But I don't know that our society wants it to happen, but I don't know if they're willing to pay extra for it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I've seen surveys where 85% people want to buy something regeneratively grown, but only 15% of those folks are willing to pay more, I think, is what I read. I can't remember the source I saw that, but I think I was on or heard on the radio or read that in an email or publication. But I think that's probably about spot on. So, but I think ultimately, if I was king for a day, I'd love to see a premium for regeneratively grown, like there would be for organically grown or non-GMO. But I don't know if that's a possibility. We are growing some non-GMO corn, get a little bit of a premium for that here, but an organic is, if you want to go to that route, there's a big premium to get there. But anyways, yeah, I don't know. I think people are getting more and more interested in it, and why they should. I think it's I think it's important that private companies, or for our society as a whole, be aware of regenerative agriculture. Just, we need to improve our soil health and our soil resilience, and if we could get that's important for feeding our society and getting healthy food on the table. I think there's a lot of momentum right there about what the pyramid getting reworked, and um, what I've seen how wife and I feed our family is protein's the center of it. And so getting more protein off our soils instead of maybe less and less carbs, I think would be a good thing. And well, I think, from what have seen from our data with the adoption of poultry litter and what it's done to our biology on the partnership plot, is animal agriculture is important for soil health. And I think if we want to grow soil health and regenerative agriculture, we got to grow animal agriculture. Um, if you want to look at a big 1,000-foot level view of this thing where we're exporting soybeans to China and they're getting fed hogs over there, well, maybe we need to be feeding the hogs here with those soybeans and then exporting the pork instead, potentially. So we can have, we're going to lose, when we export the grain, we're losing out on that manure. My goal is every farm, every row crop acre in our country get manure applied to it. That would be huge, or kind of be a zero system. Instead of having to mine our P and K, we could have a zero sum or a closed system, and I know a few farms they're doing it that way. They got a feed lot, and then it's just they're feeding the corn to the cattle, and the manure is going back on the land where the corn's being grown. Those farms are making money. There's not money leaving that farm going to fertilizer companies, or it's definitely minimal versus a farm that's completely reliant on commercial fertilizer.
No, I'd agree. I mean, I think that's why animal integration is one of those principles of regenerative agriculture. I think it's tricky, because some people, it's just, you talk about all the changes you've already had to make just from doing cover crops and poultry litter. I mean, I think for some people, just such a big jump to try to think about, oh, how would I incorporate livestock? But I mean, I think your guys' research and just conversations with people I think the agronomy and the economics both say it works if you can make it work, So I'm encouraged to hear that's how you guys are thinking about things. I personally think that's how more people need to be thinking about things as well. So
yeah, there's a lot of, you got to just say you got a 1,000-acre farmer and you tell them, well, you just need to go build a feedlot to make enough manure to apply to your 1,000 acres. Well, the amount of money it takes just to buy the cattle to do that, and the capital outlay and the risk. But I think there are some programs maybe coming through some of all this regenerative ag talk to help farmers maybe do some of those kinds of things. One idea that I heard tossed around was open up CRP for grazing, and to grow our herd with where it is right now with where beef prices are, and then instead of that CRP land going back to growing wheat and massive amounts of tillage, it could stay in native and have cattle grazing on it. So those are all kind of conversations I think we need to be having to improve regenerative agriculture, improve our soil, and hopefully put healthy food on the table for our families and consumers.
I think that's everyone's goal, hopefully, in this conversation. So, well, to wrap up, I just have a question for both of you, and this is what I ask all my guests to end the conversation. But what's just something currently going on your work and your farm that you're excited about? Is there anything new you're trying, or anything I guess we just kind of talked a little bit of what might be exciting you, Nick, but just want to kind of open the floor to both of you. It can really be wide open question to just something that's going on positive that you're excited about.
I think over the course of the last few years, we've been trying to adopt a cover crop ahead of our corn crop, and we think we have found something with the hairy vetch cover crop ahead of the corn planting into that, and the amount of nitrogen the hairy vetch can produce, depending on how long you let it grow, is very eye-opening, and to be able to reduce our nitrogen inputs um, tied to that corn crop can be significant, especially with the way nitrogen prices fluctuate, and they're so dependent on what happens and all the conflicts going on in the world today. And so to be able to be growing something out that like that out in our field, it kind of gets me excited. You know, we got something to back that up on and help us save money that way. Um, I'm also excited about I think more and more people are getting more interested in soil health practices, and um, now that we've kind of been more um, experienced at doing this, I kind of get excited to help people adopt those practices to their farm, and try to be there to help consult with that.
Yeah. Well, and I know people really appreciate it to get to hear your guys' perspective. How about you, Nick? We'll give you the final word.
Hayden summed a lot of things up there real well, especially the top of mind for me too is the hairy vetch. Being able to plant corn into a green cover crop that you don't have to pay the nitrogen penalty has been great, and it's been almost a dream come true. Now, every year is different, and how you manage it every year is different. So we'll always get humbled, I'm sure, but last year we had a lot of success and probably got about an 80 unit credit out of the hairy vetch. So today, nitrogen's running at a rate about 80 to 90 cents a unit. So that's a big deal. It's a lot of money. I would say except where we're excited, what excites me most currently on our farm is one, the hairy vetch, but two, where we're at is when you go to seed 10,000 acres of cover crops, that's no small task. And you think about a lot of folks are your gut instinct when you say, "Oh, I got to seed a cover crop," is I got to go out there and drill it after harvest, or that's the optimum way. Well, I feel like on our farm we're getting very we're kind of starting to take more of a practical approach at things, where none of our cover crops hardly are getting drilled with a drill. They're all being interseeded or broadcasted after harvest with fertilizer spreaders or the Hagee interseeder. And so we can get across a large amount of acres in a short amount of time, and we're not engaging the soil or disturbing the soil when we do that. There's a big advantage. We had 4 inches of rain one night here a month ago, or not even that, 3 weeks ago. And if we'd have drilled the rye instead of spreading it, those corn stalks would have washed off the field. And whereas if we spread it, we just spread them, they stayed intact. And so, we're farming 12,000 acres, and we're not going to use a four-wheel drive tractor this spring. It's just, it's a few 4, 5, 8 Rs on row crop 30-inch corn planters is what we're going to run. And that's a big deal to not have. We're minimizing horsepower. We're just running planters. That's the only thing we're engaging the soil with. There's no tillage or equipment, or not even drills at this point. We're just running planters, and we'll spread the cover crops in the fall and let the rain bring it up. And I understand we're in a part of the state where we get more moisture, and that's possible. You get west of the Flint Hills, and that's a different story. They don't get those folks out there aren't blessed with the rain to bring the cover crops up without putting it in the ground with a drill. But I think we've really started to ask ourselves, is just driving the tractor across the field, is that trip necessary? We got to really think twice about running it, because those things are expensive now. And they were always expensive, but they just cost of equipment here in the last few years has really jumped. So you got to really ask yourself, before you drive something across the field, if that trip's going to make you money or provide a return on investment.
And couple more things I'd like to add as we continue in our soil health journey and our biology becomes more active, as we have seen through the testing we've done with Dr. Rice, is what is our next step of a input that we could cut. Obviously, we've cut commercial phosphorus and potassium. There's potential to cut our synthetic nitrogen inputs, but what is that next thing? Is it seed treatments? Is it fungicides, or is it more herbicides? Those are all questions still yet to be answered. And then another, Nick was talking about equipment, and as autonomy becomes more and more prevalent as the years goes on here, are we starting to get away from big horsepower, big implements, and going towards smaller implements and running around the clock instead of operating ourselves and the pieces of equipment long hours of the day. So a lot to look forward to as we go here in the future.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a good way to wrap it up. I know that, that's one of the things we want to talk to more people about, is about the technology side of that. So that could be a good future episode. If you guys ever experiment with that, I'm sure our audience will be interested to hear how that's gone for you. But otherwise, we look forward to talking to you guys again in the future. And Nick and Hayden, thank you for your time. And everybody, thank you for tuning into the K-State Regen Ag Podcast.
Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day.